All right, guys, welcome back. I've tried a bunch of times and I finally figured out Fidelity doesn't like me to have my camera filming while we are recording these on their website. So this hasn't happened before, but you get my initial down there instead, which is fantastic initial. All right, so here we are. We went to investment products, we went to mutual funds, and we are going to explore fund ideas and then research all funds. Okay, so we're going to do a search, and here's where we get to pick mutual funds. Okay, so let's just go ahead and decide what we want to do. So I'm going to say US equity. Okay, so US companies, or you can search by risk, but I'm going to search by, well, actually, I'll just keep it open. So you can narrow it down. I'm going to say not just Fidelity funds. So I'm going to keep this open. I'm going to say all. So I want to see active and passive, active and index funds. Overall, I want a 5-star rating. I want high returns, and I'm okay with expenses. I don't really care as long as it has high returns and a high rating. Okay, and then here you're going to see if there are transaction fees or sales charges. Okay, so there's 526 funds. Let's take a look. So it's going to show Fidelity funds up here at the top, and it's sorting them through the 3-year average return. Okay, so I'm actually going to skip down here and I'm going to look at these other funds. So we have Barron Partners Fund Institutional Shares, BPTIX. It's a large growth category. The 3-year return is 49.84%. Holy smokes. Highest on the list as far as 3-year return. If you look over here, the fee is 1.3% is the expense ratio. So that's a higher expense ratio, pretty much double of what the other ones we were seeing. But if they're getting this type of return, then who cares, right? Life of the fund is 23.92. It's basically 24%. So this is interesting. Let's sort by this. And it falls just a little bit over the lifetime, but it's got a lot of longer track record than these. These are not very old. These are less than 5 years old here. So among companies that have the track record over the life, that's pretty darn good. I'm curious about this one. So let's just open this one up and see what happens. So there is a transaction fee or a load. So it's important to see. Year to date, down 9.4%. This is a Russell Midcap Growth Index, and it is destroying the index. Holy cow, look at that. That's massive outperformance. Year to date's that, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. So it's got great rating, high returns, higher than average expenses, and still moderate risk. Expense ratio is 1.3%, okay, but there is a transaction fee. So it'll come down here and tell you what the transaction fee is, and could be $250 or $100 minimum, etc. Okay, there could be other sales charges. So you just kind of find out once you buy in. Let's see if it shares it here. Dividend pricing, minimums. I don't see where it details that. So that might just happen when you actually go to buy it. They'll tell you what the fee is. But this fund is pretty good. Now, if you look, what is this? What's the share price again? The share price is the NAV, the NAV, okay? And right now, the NAV is $186.44, $186.44 for one share of this mutual fund. That is the net asset value. Oh, look here, $1 million is the minimum investment. $1 million is the minimum investment. Very interesting. So this is definitely, yeah, these are institutional shares. That makes sense. It's right in the name. So odds of you getting into this fund are pretty low, but Ronald and Michael Barron have been great fund managers and they've been doing great. Let's go check out why we think they've been doing so well. 34 holdings. They only have 34 companies in here, and the top 10 make up 90% of the portfolio. And Tesla makes up 50%. 50% of this fund is based on Tesla's performance. Tesla has been an absolute rocket. And so, you can see the separation here. That happened. Tesla has just skyrocketed itself. So now we can kind of see what's been driving the performance. So maybe these fund managers aren't so brilliant. They just went all in on Tesla. Who knows? But you can see here that there's a few others. This one doesn't have a ticker. That means it's a private company. They own private shares in a private company. It's not publicly traded. Space Exploration Technologies. So you can look at the prospectus, get an idea of the other funds that are in there. But yeah, very interesting as far as that goes. So let's talk about risk really quick then. When we look at the other funds, they had, 300, 500 different companies in there, which means they are very, very, very diversified. They're spreading out the risk over 500, hundreds of companies. So you can have one company absolutely tank and the fund maybe wouldn't even notice unless it was one of its top 10 holdings. So in here, if Tesla drops like crazy, this fund is going to get destroyed. 50% of it's based on Tesla and only 34 holdings. So there's much more concentration in this. Only 34 companies and 50% on Tesla. Very highly concentrated fund, which is why it's getting outsized returns. It just so happens that it's paid off. Anyways, very interesting to check out. So let's come back here and look at this. Okay, well, it's institutional, no dice, can't help. Let's look at a different fund, and we're gonna do it based on the 3-year. So we have Barron Partners Fund retail shares. Hey, looky there. So it looks like they have retail. Let's go look at this fund. Basically very similar performance. The fee is much higher, 1.56 versus 1.3, because they're taking smaller dollars. But let's go take a look and see. Minimum investment, $2,500. So you can get this fund. It's basically managed the exact same, right? Tesla at 50%. We got Ronald and Michael, and they made a retail. Retail is just like normal investors. And there you go. So you can get into the fund. It's got higher expenses. So your returns are going to be a little bit lower, but you can get in. There you go. Now, again, as a disclaimer, I don't recommend any funds. I'm not your investment advisor. And so I'm just showing you different possibilities and showing you how to look at these. Okay, that pretty much wraps this up. You can sort by any of these categories and any of these rankings. And, we can even include ETFs in there. But those are the things that I look at when I'm looking at mutual fund. I'm like, hey, is this mutual fund good? I don't know. Those are the things that I look at. Let's look at one of these. Let's look at this Fidelity fund since it's right here at the top. Now, what's interesting though is because we selected all funds, all equity, this is comparing all funds, no matter what their benchmark is, which means no matter what their risk profile is. So the risk profile of this is much higher than, for example, blue chip growth fund. They're both large growth categories, but this one, right, is spread out over several hundred companies. This one's spread out over one, which is Tesla. And then the other 33 companies make up the other 50%. So risk profile is much higher here than on this one. But let's look at select semiconductors. This is very focused niche in semiconductor companies, which obviously we've seen a huge spike. Overall rating, overall returns, low expenses, higher than average risk. If we look at so this one is comparing against the S&P 500. I don't think that would be a very appropriate benchmark, probably. So we have this one, okay, the Semicron Equity Index, the 2550, and technology. So there's not exact benchmarks sometimes. So you just kind of find some that are similar to get a good idea. But as you can look here, this fund is doing better than this one, much better than these two benchmarks, and is mirroring closely to this one, but it's still beating. It's outperforming. Expense ratio, 0.7, minimum to invest 0. It's important. As we saw before with the $1 million fund. Over the life of the fund, it was born in 1985, and it has a 14.67% average annual return versus the S&P 500. And then these other indexes, you can tell these haven't been alive very long, right? They're 10 years and a little bit more, maybe exactly 10 years. So if you look across the 10-year, it's still outperforming all of these. So that's pretty decent. Curious what companies this is invested in. We got NVIDIA, one of the biggest chip manufacturers ever. Marvell Technology, NXP Semiconductors, Microchip, Broadcom, Teradyne, Global Foundries, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Fund manager, Adam Benjamin. Only been there since 2020. So he's pretty new. He's been there, essentially since the pandemic hit. So that's pretty interesting. He hasn't been there very long, but it's been doing okay. And he manages a few different portfolios for him. And he's managed a bunch before. So he's got, decent tenure as far as experience there. But yeah. So that pretty much rounds that out. I'll do another video just focused on ETFs so you can kind of see the difference. And then I think that'll pretty much wrap up this conversation on mutual funds and ETFs. So we will see you guys in the next video.
Stay tuned. More real strategies for real financial outcomes coming soon.